Program. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. There's a lot of talk with this NATO summit about the potential return to the White House of former President Trump. He's derided NATO, even used about withdrawing from the alliance, the U.S. from it. I mean, should the U.S. stay in NATO?
Oh, of course. I mean, I've never seen NATO stronger than it is today. I think Putin's goal was to divide NATO, and it achieved just the opposite. It made it stronger, more unified. The ascension of Sweden and Finland has really enhanced the NATO organization. I think what the president's really getting at is, and I don't think he's talking about really getting out of NATO. He just wants them to pay their burden at the 2% GDP level that has been agreed to. I think he also would have a plan where they would have to step up, to the plate a little bit more. It's in their backyard. It's in their best interest. But we will still keep our nuclear capabilities, our bases, the military itself. We have a lot of, the world's on fire, Karina. I mean, we've got two hot wars going on now, one in the Middle East, one in Ukraine, and then also a hot zone in the Pacific. So the demands on the United States military are they're very stressed right now.
Yeah, and I mean, you've shown your support for Ukraine. I mean, how much of this summit will be focused on that and really be about demonstrating a long-term commitment to Ukraine, and why is that important?
It's important that Ukraine and Putin know that NATO is strongly behind what's happening in this conflict. I also think the supplemental that I helped get passed, particularly the Ukraine funding, was important. I did write into the language the use of ATACMS, which is the longer range artillery. I'll be meeting with Zelensky tonight at the Reagan Institute. I think one of his concerns is the restrictions put on him by the administration, in spite of what Congress did and the intent of Congress to allow them to use the longer range artillery to hit these targets right across the border in Russia. These are the very targets that bombed this children's hospital in Kyiv, killing almost 40 children. That shows you how barbaric the Russians are.
A lot of this summit will be focused on Biden and Biden's quote unquote fitness for office. I mean, as a Republican, what do you think it would mean for Biden to stay in the race or to exit?
Well, let me just say, I have to say, a lot of our world leaders here at the NATO summit are concerned about the mental fitness of the president, as am I. I visited with him in the White House on the supplemental, and it just seemed like there's something not all right. And I think that's the same Biden you saw at the debate. And to me, it's very sad. I mean, my mother was afflicted with Alzheimer's, and however, it's dangerous because our foreign adversaries look at the commander in chief, and if they see that he doesn't have the mental faculties or the capability or fitness to be in office, it does raise serious questions at a time when we have a lot of hot spots around the world, and the president has first strike capabilities with our nuclear weapons. We need someone that has the full judgment capability.
If Biden were to get out of the race and step aside, I mean, what do you think it would mean for Trump in November if he were to have to go up against somebody else?
Let me say first, I think if he stayed in the race, again, that debate was a cognitive test. And I think he failed that test. It's probably one of the most devastating performances I've ever seen in a presidential debate. And there's a real question of fitness of character that even within his own party, you're seeing a lot of dissension. If he gets out of the race, I think that would put maybe a fresher, more viable candidate that has the better cognitive capabilities. But either way, I think the Democrats are going to have a difficult time winning this presidential, just given the issues at hand. The way I look at the world stage right now, with the fall of Afghanistan which led to Putin invading Ukraine, which led to Chairman Xi threatening the Pacific, the Ayatollah rearing his ugly head in the Middle East. And now we have this latest report about ISIS entering the United States through the southern border. I think, especially in Texas, the border has always been a big issue, but now we're seeing a direct correlation between failed foreign policy and a direct threat to the homeland of the United States.
Your colleague, Representative Chip Roy, wants to try to remove Biden using the 25th Amendment. What do you think is the likelihood of that, and do you support it?
Well, first of all, the Congress doesn't have the power to invoke the 25th Amendment. Under the Constitution, it's the cabinet and the vice president. So that may put pressure, but I think that's ultimately up to the president's cabinet and vice president. I think the better approach here would be, to have his doctor come forward with the cognitive test, or possibly get an independent medical evaluation from maybe say the director of Walter Reed Hospital, or we know that also one of the doctor who works on Parkinson's has been there 7 times, and I understand the privacy concerns, but I think that's overridden by the American people's right to know about the mental fitness of Mr. Biden and his ability to run for 4 more years as president. I kind of question if he can stand 4 more months right now, given what we saw the other night.
I want to turn to, because you've also been in the news for the fact that you are being term limited out as of your chairmanship, House Foreign Affairs Committee, but you want to stay on and you're seeking a waiver to try to continue on doing that role. Why do you want to continue?
Really, it's not about me. I put the nation above myself. I just feel that this is such a volatile time in terms of foreign policy. I've never seen, like I say, the world's on fire, and somebody is going to have to work with, hopefully, the new president to get a foreign policy agenda passed that will fix, the problems that have been created by this administration. And I think, day one, I can start fulfilling that agenda rather than having a transition of a new chair. It's not unprecedented. I think I have the respect of my colleagues, both on the committee and off and on the steering committee, because I do think it would be in the best interest of the next administration and the nation to have that continuity, especially right now when you have so many troubled spots.
Yeah, I mean, lastly, there are several of your colleagues who are gunning for that position. I mean, how tough does that make it then to try to retain it?
Well, they're not running against me or the waiver. They basically are saying if I don't get the waiver, then they would like to consider to be a candidate for the chairmanship. So, we'll see how this plays out. I've been very blessed to have served as chairman of the Homeland Security Committee for 3 terms and 2 terms as ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and now chairman. I have to say it's been a very fascinating job to be in, to look at everything that's happening all across the world right now and in the classified space, and to be able to stop these threats. My biggest concern, Karina, is one of these hotspots could easily erupt into a miscalculation and into World War III. And I don't want to see us go through another World War like we did with my father's generation, who served in World War II. I just got back from Normandy and 80th anniversary, visited with 100 veterans there who told their stories to me about D-Day. And, my dad was a bombardier in a B-17. Winston Churchill said it was it was a war that could have been prevented. And I think he was right about that. Given the proper deterrence, we can stop a World War III, but you have to project power and strength and not weakness, which that's what I'm concerned right now, is we have a president who projects weakness on the world stage.
Chairman McCaul, always appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Karina.